on a younger woman in any kind of like remotely legitimate way either. That sounds almost too innocent to say it like that. But.
It was very specific. He said something to the effect of that you could buy a 16-year-old girl in, I believe it was the Netherlands, but don't quote me on that.
It's the mayor of the second or third largest city in the state of Michigan.
Like you don't know where that goes down, Jim.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what I guess if we're going to State of the Union, I mean, I don't know how long this lasts for. You would think with the existing administration and with the how to solve the marijuana issue for patients in Michigan was to call upon the caregivers. I'd say the State of the Union for caregivers is stronger than it's ever been theoretically, and
I think that'll stay. You think it'll stay that way?
Even if not opted in, because I think a play would be to create something in the MMFLA where caregivers could qualify. And if you're going to do an amendment, I don't think you touch the MMA. But even if they didn't do something like that and make a path, and the existing MMA could continue on, and 72 plans and caregiving, I think that, and they don't touch that. Just worst case scenario, you leave the MMA alone.
I think that's the best case.
That's what
scenario.
I'm saying. Okay,
certainly parallel with the new laws that works really well.
Yeah, just don't touch it. Just leave
it
alone.
Right. If you
it's
want
good.
To, right. And I'm saying there's a lot of. I mean, it's almost.
But that won't happen.
As I joke sometimes, it's maybe blasphemy to our licensed clients. But I could argue the economics of it effectively, I think. But the idea of letting caregivers in some other scale participate in this marketplace, it really benefits all involved because it creates some competition. It puts saleable goods that at a price that patients are used to purchasing to just keep the business open and operating. So there creates people coming in and a reason to buy as opposed to none at all.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but if you look at it from these people's points of view, they've invested heavily in becoming licensed.
I got that, but I could say to them, okay, if you are fighting with this idea because you're a 1,500 licensed plant grower, and the option is for you to control this market, hold back, put it on, dictate your price, and the retailer purchases it for your demand price without any conscientious about what the purchase price is, the usable, that people are accustomed to purchasing, then the retail places are going to fall apart.
Well, no,
you can't keep those places in business.
That's not what needs to happen.
Well,
what needs to happen is they need to make the system more accessible by people like caregivers. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because at the end of the day, then everybody's participating in the exact same right. Right. But what I'm saying is forget the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act for a minute. Amend the MMFLA.
Yeah, that's all we're talking about.
And say that it's a micro grow license.
Or something. Listen.
Yeah.
We're talking about the same things. You do not amend the MMA. You amend the MMFLA, and you allow for what's been going on. You just create a mechanism, and you
just codify the behavior that's existing.
And then everybody's in the same
reasonable
system.
regulations.
Include the testing and stuff like that.
Testing
it's going to be it's going to be a little
give people bright lines for them to follow.
Subject
so
to some taxing and regulations, what have you. You know what I mean?
There's going to be a little bit.
It creates.
But it has
competition,
right?
That the bigger license that have something to fight with, and allows the retailers to have some on the shelves that will get people in the doors, right?
But it has to be fair because you're talking about someone that maybe is going to grow 100 plants. And you have to make the fees proportional and you have to make the requirements proportional and all of that. Because if it's not accessible, it doesn't work.
I'm going to go as far as to say they should allow the same thing for Prop 1 people with your 12 plants. Why not? Really create some, true economic.
If there's a mechanism to bring something that's of decent quality that passes all the vetting, it should be able to be brought to market, right?
In the American, what is it? American Dream. I was listening to Rage Against the Machine on the way to court today. These are all things.
If it's not worthy of coming to market, it'll get refused.
That's right. Yep.
Well, but that may be
at this point the consumer's not ignorant.
The medical grower is also going to have a higher quality and bring different phenols to the market. Where some of these commercial grows, they're going to start using Scott's Miracle Grow, some crazy things in their garden, and it could go sideways for keeping the caregivers involved in it. I think you're going to see a lot more people bringing new quality to the market.
You know, Tony, one of the things I've been saying all a long time is that if you let bean counters decide what you grow in your garden, right, they're going to grow the big, gigantic indica plants every time because per square foot it's going to give you greater yield. Not necessarily better medicine, and not necessarily a variety of plant, but when you look at return on yield per square foot, if that's the only category you're using. Now, smaller caregivers, they know the value of having obscure strains that help particular people or having something that maybe doesn't yield that great but is in high demand. Those are the type of things that caregivers have developed a knowledge of over the last 10 years. And to just discard that knowledge as if we never had it?
Right. And when they're straight CBDs and you're looking with a catatonic 4 or something like that.
Right.
You know, why would you grow that in a commercial 1,500 plant grow? They would have no value in that.
Right. Cap plants don't yield very much for their listeners that don't know.
Helped by that. So.
Yeah. So very valuable medicine doesn't always have the biggest yield per plant, though.
And there aren't that many, per se proven 1,500 plant grows where you've got that combination of, the necessary coming together of all the factors that produce a good grow, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that you've got to get, in a lot more factors the larger it is. And
people like the medical side of the grow, you'll even hear people playing music and just doing things even way out there. But, at a commercial level, you're just going to get the same thing, the same pesticides, and the plants could use a whole different way to grow. And you're going to see that quality with the caregivers, I think.
Is it an expense factor or attention factor or both?
I think, people, I don't want to say from the caregiver side, but those people really love growing. I'm not saying that the commercial people don't, but, some people go work at GM and it's a great place and they know what they're walking into. That's a corporate commercial area versus...
Yeah, you can't replicate the heart of a caregiver as an employee. No. It's impossible.
No. And there's something to be said for managing a smaller or an intermediate-sized garden because now you've got a connection to each one of the plants. You're familiar with them. This one looks a little bit weak, so I have to move it around, as opposed to a larger system where it may just not necessarily be. And then you take and what's called homogenize the plant, where they would like you to take your samples and chop everything up and then take it directly from that. That doesn't necessarily respect the true medicine as opposed to some of the things that you wouldn't normally sell. So.
Plus just simple supply and demand. When you're growing 1,500 plants, your price point's got to be lower. Thus, your investment into the product's got to be lower. It's almost guaranteed it's going to be a lower quality medicine.
Yeah, it'll be cheaper, and people will pay more for the more craft boutique-style medicine.
Yeah. I'll say this, though, too. What really concerns me about the stacking of licenses where you get to 6,000 or 9,000 plants is that oftentimes a grow like that can fail for corporate reasons. Perhaps there's a bankruptcy. Perhaps there's some kind of an investigation. So nothing that has anything to do with the quality of the medicine, but if it fails on a corporate level, now you've taken 9,000 plants or 6,000 plants directly out of the supply chain. And that's a vulnerability. And even though they have large capitalization requirements, still, I mean, this is a rocky business. People could fail all the time. So when you take a hit like that to the supply chain, it really can interrupt the flow of medicine, crucial medicine to patients. And we are still talking about a medical program whose patients have one defining characteristic, and that's that a doctor has said they're so ill that cannabis could potentially give them benefit. So this is the advantage of having caregivers in the system, is that there are so many people out there providing into the supply chain, Michael, that any one particular failure of an individual is not going to have a big ripple effect and change supply and change pricing and affect people's treatment regimen. So caregivers just provide an insulated value to the whole system to make sure that there's a smooth supply chain.
Strength in numbers.
And you know what? At the end of the day, the idea that the licensed facilities are planning on making their businesses work from the exclusiveness of the 200,000 or 300,000 patients in Michigan is versus, the
7 million adults.
Right. So, and I'm saying like that market is should be up for supply and demand.
Step one.
In terms of, what I'm saying, like that should be open for battle. Like the recreational may not be included in that because there's no, if you're not growing your own 12 plants for yourself, but other than getting it at a licensed facility, there's really no place that people should expect to get it. So let that be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that would make sense. I mean, really the fight for caregivers supplying to patients generally should be up for grabs by the best let the best grower win. You know what I mean? And it doesn't even interfere with the recreational market. It's a whole new ballgame when that happens, right?
Well, and we recognize, though, that the way that the permanent admin rules were written, caregivers were not part of the supply chain. So that this is why we have to do this 3 month go-go dance, to get caregivers added on every 3 months back into the system, because technically they're not in there. So when we talk about the solution you've suggested, which is a modification to the MMFLA, which is not a voter-directed initiative, so only takes a 50% vote in the House and 50% in the Senate. It has the smaller standard. That's a more doable solution, especially since this has been in the media now all of 2018. We did this 3 month dance the whole last year. Caregivers were out. No, we got to keep them in. So this has been something that lawmakers have been watching for a while, and I know that they recognize that, especially with the passage of our legalization proposal by such a good margin. Their constituents care about this.
The ending of the 3% tax for patients is significant, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a signing off of the state that they're not going to expect, generally, revenue,
Yep.
and it's going to come from another source. I'm saying, there is, first of all, on the, I don't know where we're on the break here, but the State of the Union, I think we should all, be somewhat cautious but optimistic that as we stand here today, the caregivers are in the best position they've been in, and much better, especially with the current existing government, than we would have expected with anyone else. And their role right now as truly heroes to prevent the state of emergency from blowing up, I don't know how they could be, if not included within the system, at least not discarded, legislated away. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and Michael, we saw in 2019 from January 1 to January 15, we saw exactly what happened to the MMFLA system when there were no caregivers in it. There were fewer places open. The caregivers, the places, some of them had to close because they didn't have enough product. The supply chain was so in its infancy that without caregivers propping it up, literally the patients had no medicine available.
You think it's bad now, just wait until they get licensed for rec. Because it's coming, and the medical licensees get first crack at the rec license.
Okay, we know that.
Well, when that happens, the patients are going to be deprived of even more medicine because now there's more demand on a system that could never support.
Well, there's the micro opportunities are the exception to that.
That's true.
And I believe that the market will dictate that even those rec places that will eventually diffuse the medical system will have specifically medical products in their stores to satisfy those people who want those products.
They can have caregiver-supplied medical sections, non-tax, for patients to come by marijuana.
And the metric system will prevent people from taking it out of the medical system and then transferring it over to the rec because it's got to be logged.
That's not even what I'm proposing.
It could be. I'm just saying these are solutions for anyone that's listening.
If you want to eliminate the black market...
Who said they want to do that?
Well, if that's the goal, it's supposedly the goal. That's what I keep hearing. The police are saying that.
Well, then you got to take it out of the schedule.
Get it out of the schedule.
So, eliminate about this lawsuit.
Eliminate the diversion. Allow the caregivers to begin supplying into the one large system.
I'm down with this. Competition.
Have one system. It simplifies the entire thing, and you have this buffer for when things go sideways, and they're going to go sideways for the next 5 or 6 years.
So, in terms of the amount of possession the caregivers are allowed to have, couldn't it have been, if it wasn't looked at specifically, as being restrictive or obstructionist, couldn't there have been a functional interpretation, or could there still be a functional interpretation that what the caregivers can do is something similar that was specifically written into the MRTMA, which is at least possess what they produce from the plants that they are able to grow from the licenses, and maybe they need to keep it secure, similarly to the the MRTMA, and then when they're out and about, the 15-ounce. I mean, that would make more functional sense of an interpretation. Thinking that, I mean, we have new leadership in there. There's reasons to revisit some of these things.
To get the benefit of the interpretation that of the marijuana grown from your plants, that's now the amount you're allowed to possess.
Yeah, I think that's.
When you're out and about, the 15-ounce would apply. But when you harvest, you're allowed to grow so many plants. If you harvest, you happen to have a good harvest.
You know what that
then
argument's
you
best?
should now not be immediately illegal.
You know that argument's best?
When the police
marijuana is
raid
not a
you,
Schedule 1 drug anymore.
when the police
Schedule
raid
it
you,
all.
just say, "Oh no, that's not medical."
And so then only so much is used then for the various products or for the patients and that type of stuff, and then